All right, we are live with a DeflateGate update. We had some DeflateGate stuff to talk about, so I decided to call in the world's, in my opinion at least, and I think in most people's opinion, the world's foremost expert on DeflateGate. That is one Michael Hurley, of course. Hurley, everyone knows who you are, but he is a writer for CBS Boston. We've had him on the show before. Love having you here, Michael. Thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate you, man.
Of course. I said the other day, Touchroom Rich called me because Deflategate was in the news. Um, and I told them, like, I have this file cabinet in here and it's full of garbage. And for the most part, it stays shut. It gets dusty. But every now and then, the drawer comes out and out comes all this useless memories, knowledge, facts,
Yep,
whatever. So when it's in the news, like, that's when it's time to bust it out.
100%. 100%. And that's, I mean, you're totally right about that. And this is one of those things for me that I've always just been like, it doesn't make any sense. Like the science, all of it makes no sense. And yes, there's some shady parts to it on the Patriots end, but it's just like it never made sense that this happened. And, and there's so many different things and layers to it. But I just
Can
love
I butt in? Can I
do
butt
it.
in real quick? Just
Absolutely,
because
you
I
can.
just like the larger thing before we turn anyone off is people like, oh, it's the dumbest thing, get over it, like it's gone. It's like that's exactly the point, and that we shouldn't forget it is like the dumbest thing in the history of the world was turned into a worldwide scandal, and it's
Right.
important not to just let that happen.
Right. It led like real news stories, not sports news stories. It led real news stories for weeks. Right? Tom
Nationally.
Brady was suspended for 4 games. The Patriots lost a first round draft pick and were suspended over $1 million combined. It's outrageous that something this dumb cost them this much. And by the way, no other team has lost a first round draft pick since the mid 80s. So that's almost unprecedented. I mean, yeah, you have the Saints scandal, right? The Bountygate scandal, and Sean Payton gets suspended for a year, but they don't lose a first round draft pick, right? It's like, how serious do you want it to be for them to lose a first round draft pick, right? And so
You
it's
should have to do something. And that's the thing. Like
yeah,
people say they got off easy on Spygate, and that's why they went heavy on Deflategate. It's like they didn't get off easy on Spygate. They lost a first round pick. And you mentioned someone did lose a pick in the 80s, but I forget what it was. It wasn't like a straight loss. There was either like a swap or some
yeah, it
they
was
moved to
something
the end.
foolish, yeah,
Because the Spygate punishment was the first time a team had ever had a first round pick just completely taken away. So like they didn't get off easy then. There was no need for
right,
retaliation. It's just the owners got pissed seeing the Patriots win and make the Super Bowl so much and make the AFC Championship game every year. For at that point in 2014, it's like, all right, end this. And it's kind of funny. And in the end, obviously, the story is they overcame it and won some more Super Bowls. But it still shouldn't just allow, like, we can't just be like, oh yeah, it's over, because it's over a puff of air in a football that no one ever cared about before, no one will ever care about again, and nobody actually cared about at the time. It was just about this fun scandal and catching them and the whole thing, but it was all over nothing. And I think as time has passed, that's becoming more clear to a lot more people.
right, right. And that to me is one of those things where you just look at it and say, like, what the hell are we doing here? And think about, 2006 now. I realize the Patriots went to 3 straight Super Bowls. They played in 04. They lost their draft pick in 2016. 04. They won in 04 as well, but they won in 14.
You were right. I didn't.
So they won in 14, of course. And then they lost their first round draft pick in 2016. Now they proceeded to make 3 straight Super Bowls. But there wasn't a ton of talent on the roster by the time 2019 rolled around, and maybe someone had picked 29 in the 2016 draft might have been able to help them out in that situation, and they weren't there. And that's where it's like everyone can complain about it and say, oh, shut up about this thing. And like you said, but it's like those ramifications are there forever. There are people that still say you guys cheated because of the footballs, and so therefore your titles are invalid. And it's like, well, we still have to deal with that. No matter what comes out, we still have to deal with that. And that's just it's unfair, which I mean, like, whatever. I'm sitting here saying it's unfair, but like, so what? But still, it's like the fact that we have to defend that is ridiculous.
And the fact that at the time it was evident that the people in charge were the ones doing most of the lying and the cheating and the deceit.
Correct.
Um, those of us, I mean, and I'll just be honest. I mean, like when the Wells report came out, I'm like, oh, I mean, clearly the Patriots were caught in this. Like, I mean, I wasn't digging into, I didn't know the ideal gas law. Like, I wasn't a
Right.
physicist. I read the report and I'm like, all right, well, like, there it is, sure. But even with that, when the 4-game punishment came out, it was like, well, that's absurd. Like
Right.
that is so ridiculous. And then as more and more came out, and really, I'll tell you the number one turning point for me just intellectually on the matter was when Richard Berman, the judge in New York, unsealed the transcript for Brady's appeal hearing, for which Roger Goodell was the arbitrator. Roger Goodell having he was ruling on an appeal of his own ruling. He didn't pay attention. He didn't know what the hell was going on. And you read that. I remember my wife had a headache, and my baby was like, she was young, like a little baby. So it came out, and I'm like, I guess I can't read this right now. But me being me, I'm like, I ended up like bouncing her with one arm, and it was like a PDF where there was 4 pages on each page, and you had to like zoom in and scan down and then scan back up. And I was doing it with one hand, and I was like, I almost dropped my baby half the time because it was like such a mockery of a process. So that was eye opening. And over the course, and Brady had really good lawyers. More and more was just unearthed, and you're like, this is a really bad stain for the NFL. And if there was a competent leader, it would have been killed before it became anything, but instead it was allowed to mushroom and explode. And I just wanted to say, like, I didn't go in like, oh, clearly they didn't do it. It's like, oh, I guess they made the point. Like, yeah, I guess they got caught. But the more and more you find out, it's like they really didn't. And if you spend that much time, 4 months and millions of dollars on that, and that's the best you can do, it's like you didn't catch them.
Correct. And that's really the big part of it, right? And you have so many threads about the one back in, this is 2019 now, but the one back in January 2019, or December, I'm sorry, 2019. I bookmarked it at the time because I was like, this is crazy. But like just the unsealing of the Troy Vincent testimony. And it's just like, what in the, he just has no idea what the hell he's talking about. No clue what he's doing. It's unbelievable. And he just like, he's talking about, no, we didn't factor into the weather. The weather didn't matter. We didn't do this. My favorite thing ever. The question is, but at the time you didn't know that some of the reduction could happen just because of the cold or wetness or other factors, right? That just wasn't something you're aware of, correct? His answer was, I didn't include science. No, sir. Like, what? That was your answer.
Then like the next like question or two later was like, so it was generally like disorganized, the recording. Right. He was like, no, not at all. It's like, all right.
It's like you completely, it's outrageous. And then they do get into the Rodgers comments about how Rodgers tries to sneak the balls past the guys. And they're like, well, how come you never looked into that? And he's like, well, that's a post-game comment. But it's like, well, what do you mean it's a post-game comment? You never check the balls at halftime ever. You check the balls at halftime this time because of a post-game comment by the Ravens. Now, I know technically the Colts asked or whatever, but like, but that was the Ravens, right? Like the Ravens are the ones that set up the league to do it. So that post-game comment worked then, but it doesn't work when it's Aaron Rodgers because we don't want to get Aaron Rodgers in trouble. And that's like,
ugh. Well, and then there was, the Steelers and the Giants had their situation like a year later where a ball felt flat and they measured it and it was low, and the NFL was like, shut up.
Right.
Put that away. Like, this is not happening. That was how they handled it at that time. So it just goes to show that they didn't know what they were doing. And, they really, they never knew anything about it, and they still don't. But, and to get to the, as a smoking gun, whatever, like the people that want to harp on the guilt that they were caught is the text message exchange. I feel like even that, the time that McNally was called a deflator was in the spring of 2014. So I don't know if they're getting shipments of balls in or whatever, but the only reference to PSI was when the October game against the Jets, they were 17. They were blown up way too inflated. Bill Levy was the referee that night. He was interviewed by Ted Wells. We never got to see that testimony. Jeff Pash edited that right out of the Wells report. Why were they 17 that night? I'd love to know. And then the only other reference to PSI was Jastrzemski texting his girlfriend, they're supposed to be 13. And as we all know, because we all very much care about the PSI allowable limits for footballs, it's been a big, like when you're a kid, your dad's bouncing you on his lap saying, oh, the football's inflated between 12 and a half and 13 and a half. 13 is within the range.
Right.
So if just Jastrzemski's texting his girlfriend, they're supposed to be 13. I think that's what they were going for. Like, I don't think that was he's like, all right, 5 months from now, we'll be under investigation.
Right.
They're going to go through my text. So I got to cover and text my girlfriend that they're supposed to be 13. So it's like, obviously there was an involvement with getting the balls to a, but like, I could just take that and say, yeah, the stress was getting them to within the allowable limit, because you got guys like Bill Levy blasting them up to 17.
Correct.
So I think that's an important aspect to the text story, because if you just read them on, the Sports Hub air at 3:30 p.m., for example, it's going to come across a certain way.
Right. And look, that's intentional, right? We all know that that's intentional. You're reading it to make people feel a certain way, because you're trying to spin a narrative and you're trying to say, nope, this is what happened. And so I'm going to use everything in my benefit. The other thing for me, Walt Anderson said in his 19 years of refereeing, he had never in his career lost track of the footballs. So I thought that was odd. So he says he's never lost track of the footballs. Now, don't you think if
he'd done a lot of Patriots games?
He had certainly done a lot of Patriots games. And don't you think that if this were a recurring thing, right, that other referees might have said, hey, you know what? Come to think of it, I've been at Gillette before and I've lost the footballs too. That's a weird coincidence, right? That I just have, and then they were there once we got onto the field, but I wasn't looking at them. I didn't view them. Nobody said that ever.
Not just that, but he was warned that night. It was part of the pregame discussion with, what's his name? He went on to be the media referee.
Oh, Kensel? Was it Kensel?
No. Oh man, he's the head of officiating at the time. He's
Blandino?
Yes, Dean Blandino in the pregame meeting had warned him to the warning. And then on top of that, the Wells report says that Walt Anderson was losing his mind, irate, cursing when he lost the ball, saying basically panicking. Now, what did he do when he went to the field and found the guy with the balls? He said, all right, throw him out there. Instead of using the 12 backup balls, which never left his custody. So from the very beginning, there was a scent of the NFL setting something up. I don't believe that Walt Anderson was losing his mind for not having the footballs, because, as you mentioned very astutely, he had never lost them before. So if he had lost them and had been warned to be on high alert for them, A, he kind of sucks at his job because he shouldn't have lost the footballs, but B, you got 12 that never left your side that were pregame approved with your signature on them. Use those instead.
Correct.
Never happened.
Yep. And, I do want to go. I love, so the article you wrote recently, the last paragraph of the article, I think just sums up so perfectly this whole thing. But, and maybe I should save this to the end, but I'm not going to, because it's just so perfect. But you said, of course, Florio's reporting adds further confirmation to what has been known for a long time. The entity that lied the most and worked hardest to complete a cover-up during the Deflategate saga was not the Patriots. It was the NFL. And that is, in my eyes, irrefutable at this point. It is irrefutable at this point. Kevin Seifert wrote something on ESPN about it. I mean, ESPN saying something nice about the Patriots is insane. So the evidence
one like a year or two ago.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So the evidence must be crazy if ESPN is saying that the NFL covered something up and that the Patriots really weren't at fault and the NFL was. And so I just think, and to me, the biggest smoking gun here, all of it is there. The Troy Vincent stuff is outrageous, that he's the one that leaked the report to Mortensen is crazy. But destroying the PSI numbers in 2015, which clearly proved the Patriots' case, because otherwise, why would you destroy the numbers? When they said before the season, they were going to take the numbers and then they were going to release them for everyone to see. They said that. That's on record for them saying that. And then they said, oh, no, it was just a spot check. And then Roger Goodell was asked this week about it, and he said, oh, I don't know what happened to those numbers. Like it's his friggin' physics homework or something like that. Like how did you didn't just lose that?
Yeah, and it was clear, and I think I put in that stuff, I lose track, but there was never the word spot check. And it's actually still on the NFL game operations website, the 13-step process that was instituted for 2015 to measure games at random pregame and halftime, use new balls inserted at halftime and test those ones after the game, record the PSI data before halftime, post game, send that data to the league. The words recorded, measurements, they were in there 8 times. The word spot checks were in there 0 times. It was never about spot checks and seeing if there was a loss of the chain of custody of balls. That was just what they came out. This was before Super Bowl 51. Nope. Super Bowl 50, excuse me.
Yep.
The 2015 season, when they got all their data and they were like, oh, shoot. We are, turns out all of those scientists and physicists in those books are correct. Even though it was very much like an Enron too big to fail situation where you have many of the brightest scientific minds in the country reverting back to like high school physics and being like, actually, no, this happens. And like charts and data and history, and the NFL being like, no, that's not true. Let's show them testing it. They could have rigged the testing if they wanted. They couldn't even do that. And then they get the data and they say, let's put that in the shredder, and it never sees the light of day because those numbers, some of them were probably a lot lower than the ones they tested from the Patriots that night. And that would look bad. At the same time, you might remember that postseason, the Vikings were playing outdoors. They didn't have their new stadium yet. And Sal Paolantonio reports the NFL is very, concerned that the PSI will drop in the football. It's like, you can't be concerned about this now and say it's because of the temperature.
Yeah.
When you never knew before, let alone cared. And like, it's just, they basically, and it really comes out. I mean, the larger point is like Tom Brady is going to be all right. Yeah. He doesn't need Pat Lane and Mike Hurley to come to his defense and stand up for him. Like, we can't win that war, and he doesn't care. Like, it's what's done is done. But it's really, if you're a league, right, and you just had the greatest player of all time come through you, win all those Super Bowls, bring all those eyeballs to your league, be just like a beacon of football for freaking ever. To have that on him, which is just hanging on all BS and innuendo, and again, a thing that never mattered before and will never matter again. Like, they owe it to him to come out with the facts that they gathered, so that people will see that those balls measured at whatever 11.7 happens in 50 games a year and maybe more. Like they do owe that to him. And I think Roger Goodell's statement yesterday showed that they're never going to admit a single ounce of fault, which I think it's just pathetic. Like, there's no reason not to at this point. Like, you won, you took the pick, you helped ensure parity. I mean, granted, you probably screwed the league over by giving Brady 4 weeks of rest and pissing him off to no end in his late 30s.
Yep.
But, you won that segment. So come out and say, this is, the numbers were in line with what we found. We screwed up. They'll never actually do that. They do that when it's a PR nightmare. And frankly, not enough people like the Patriots or Tom Brady to care.
And that's the point, right? Is that this isn't a bigger story because people don't feel bad for the Patriots. They don't feel bad for the Patriots. They don't feel bad for Brady. And even the people that are Patriots fans are just so sick of hearing about it over and over and over again. They're like, just leave me alone with this stupid DeflateGate mess, because it's like we just keep talking about it. And, I think at this point, you're firmly entrenched on one side or the other. Like, if you still think the Patriots actually did something wrong during that game, if you still think the Patriots did something wrong, nothing is ever going to convince you that they didn't.
Well, I mean, you're on Twitter. You see they filmed walkthroughs. You see all the Spygate misconceptions that never got through to people because they don't. I mean, why would you care? Like, if you were a Browns fan and hated the Patriots, like, why would you care to research beyond general feelings and thoughts? So that's going to be the case.
Ben Volen just wrote an article.
I didn't read it. I saw the headline.
I didn't read it either but he just wrote an article saying, if you're upset about Jeff Pash destroying the evidence, then, hold your tongue, because the NFL erased all the evidence from Spygate. And it's like, they showed it to a room of reporters and recorded them showing it to the room of reporters. Yeah. It's not it's outrageous.
The best, we've had one good thing come from Spygate in 15 years almost. And it was the press conference before the Patriots went to Phoenix for Super Bowl 49. And Belichick just snapped.
Yeah.
And so he's out there in front of 70,000 people. Everyone can see it. We just had a camera on him. And it was just like, thank you. Like, thank you. Like, yeah, like they were wrong in that, and they were heavily punished. Like, they were heavily punished. And I think it was just a Richard measuring contest
100%.
between the new commissioner, the old guard, and Bill Belichick, saying this guy can't tell me what to do. And then the commissioner showing the Richard was quite large and could come right down on the Patriots. And it was, I mean, a first round pick. Belichick had to be contrite. What did he lose? $250,000 or something? It was a lot. $500,000.
I think Kraft lost $500,000. He lost $250,000.
Yeah.
I mean, so it was outrageous.
Yeah. So that, I mean, they were in violation of direct orders, whether there was a rule, whether or not. But I mean, the point is that was heavily, punished, and we never really got Belichick's contrite answer. That one moment where he just kind of snapped and was like, the guy's out there in front of 70,000 people, was like, that is the basis of it. And it like goes back. I remember in 2007 watching like ESPN pregame, and they were all doing their intense, Spygate discussion, and Mike Ditka was just sitting there. He's like, guys, can I say something? Who cares? And it was just like, anyone involved knows, what was gathered from that. It was illegal from where they were, but it wasn't this like shortcut to winning that people make it out to be.
Well, and again, and I don't want to harp on Spygate, but like, again, it was legal to record the other sideline. It just wasn't legal to do it where they were. Like, that was it's not like it was illegal to record the sideline. No, it was legal to record the sideline. You just had to do it from a certain spot, and they didn't do it from that certain spot. That was the penalty. Like, I think that a lot of people don't understand that, because they're like, oh, you filmed it. It's like, well, yeah, but you can. Everyone did. Literally everyone did it. You were allowed to do it by the league. The Patriots just did it over here instead of over here, and that's what everyone's upset about.
And to tie the two scandals together, this just popped in my head. Like, this is good stuff, exclusive right now.
Love it.
That what ties them together is the filmed Rams walkthrough report, and the 11 of 12 Mortensen report.
Right.
Both ended up being false, but both shaped the story and the narrative and public opinion, where, I don't know, 90% of the people that heard the first report never came off that stance.
Correct.
From their reaction to that. Whereas, obviously, had they filmed the Rams walkthrough, not so good. Turns out that wasn't true. Turns out Matt Walsh was an unreliable witness and had some axes to grind or whatever.
Right.
And then the 11 of 12 turned out not to be true. 2 pounds under. One might have been, but I mean, that's in line with the NFL lied to the Patriots. Dave Gardy was whatever. He was in operations, wrote a letter to Robert Kraft saying a ball was measured at 10.1. We need to investigate you. Open your doors. And it's like, no ball's measured at 10.1. That was just a straight up lie. And that was in Vincent's testimony. He's like, do you know Dave Gardy to be a careful lawyer? I think he's a lawyer, or a careful whatever.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yep.
And he was like, yes. And he's like, so would he write this? Would this be an accident or would it be intentional? And he's like, yeah, I don't know. So, I mean, but that goes in 11, like midnight Sunday, Bob Kravitz tweets it out. We're all like, okay, I guess they're going to look into this, like footballs. I remember doing a goofy story like the Monday, like I rated blame like Brady, Belichick, referees by like a scale of like deflated Belichick faces on, like, it was just goofy.
Ridiculous. But Brady was laughing about it Monday morning.
But exactly. And then Tuesday night, 11 to 12, significantly 2 pounds under drops. And it's like, well, this is a big deal. And that's when you get on NBC national news. That's when you get on the big time anchors with their big time voices. And you get Peter Alexander asking Tom Brady, what's up with our hero, at the press conference. Like, it was like sort of simmering and then went shooting like a volcano after the 11 to 12. So those are the two things, there's two stories that lasted forever that still get reported and repeated. And that's why the 11 to 12 thing is so bad. And the fact that Troy Vincent is still Goodell's right-hand man and will never lose that job, no matter how long, until Goodell finally starts, like, kind of like when a bad head coach starts firing his coordinators, like, like when Joe Judge fired Jason Garrett. Oh, yeah. That is what will happen. That's like when Vincent will go and Goodell will go soon after. So it's just despicable, I think, that they maintain a sense of like rightness and I don't know, like, you can't question them. Are you a Harry Potter fan?
I am.
So they're always like the Dolores Umbridge character. Like, you can't question them. They're wrong. They're like oppressive. They will make you like write the punishment until your hands bleed, and until you admit that you were wrong. And it's like, man, it doesn't have to be that way. That's my biggest thing. It doesn't have to be that way.
Right. That's actually, I'd never thought of it like that. That's a great reference. I like that a lot, And so it's so frustrating. And the other part of it for me, and not that it matters, but like, it's not a competitive advantage. Just flat out not. And
the fumble numbers and stuff. And it's like, you guys don't know how to hold a football. It's not a Nerf ball. You're not squeezing it. It's in your arm.
And not just that, but like, okay, Rodgers likes his overinflated. And not just that, but okay, fine. Let's keep going. Let's go further along down the line. Okay, well, if it was 12.5 to 13.5, and it was more advantageous for it to be less inflated, wouldn't everybody in the league have it at 12.5?
Oh, that was the other thing. It's like, oh, Brady likes him low because he has small hands. It's like, I don't think Tom Brady has small hands. Like,
he does.
Like, and because it's easier to throw and catch. It's like, I don't think it's like easier to throw or catch. Like, I think he played. You might remember that Jets game in 2014. Brady was pissed. Like, he was screaming on the sidelines. It was one of those games. It wasn't quite the 2013 Jets game where it was like Kembrell Tompkins and Aaron Dobson, but that 2014 game, they barely won. It was a Thursday night. I remember because my daughter was born like the Monday, and I just got home from the hospital that night. And I was like, they won on like a missed field goal at the end by the Jets.
Yeah.
It was like 17-16 or 17-15. Like, and Brady, I just remember he was pissed that night. And so you could tell something was wrong with the balls. He didn't like the way the balls were feeling. And it's because the referee had him jacked up. So it's like, where was the big scheme that night? Like, where was and there was no texts. Like, they had Brady's text he wasn't like, you MF, or we need to get these things down to 11. Like, there was no, I don't know. It was the narrative was always shaped after based on like, oh, Tom has small hands and it's easier to throw and catch with the underinflated ball. It's like, I don't think so. I don't think so. I felt football before.
The other thing about, and I don't know if you've ever texted before, Mike, but if you have, let's just say you and I texted back and forth, and then I destroyed my phone. Would they not be able to figure out what I had texted you? I feel like if they took your phone, they would be able to see my. So
turns out they had all of his texts to Jastrzemski. Right. Didn't need his phone. And that's the other thing this week with the slimy stuff that comes out with Pash, deleting the data, and with Troy Vincent blatantly lying to a media member. It's like, you want Tom Brady, one of the most famous men in the world, to just hand his phone over to those people. Like, you're out of your friggin' mind. They took Richie Incognito's phone and just blasted all that over the internet. Like, who knows what the hell's on that phone?
Well, some of Brady's emails got released when he was talking about Manning not playing and stuff like that. Like, those are like private conversations between him and Giselle and him and his friends, and they're just releasing them on the internet. Like, it's no big deal. And it's just like.
And remember too, like, there was a tabloid thing, like Affleck, he flew with Affleck and his nanny or something. Right. And the nanny had Brady's Super Bowl ring in a picture. And it's like stuff like that. I mean, Affleck's marriage disappeared after that. It's like things like that are going to be on Tom's phone that he doesn't want out there. His wife is more famous than he is. Like, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, I would never give Roger Goodell my phone, and nobody knows who I am. So if I'm Tom Brady, I'm putting it in an incinerator and then shooting it to the moon,
100%.
The ashes, before I give my phone to Roger friggin' Goodell.
Also, if they were encrypted, and again, I don't know if people have used a cell phone before.
Had the messages.
If they had the messages already, but also, I don't know if there's a feature on there that allows you to delete text conversations, and you could delete the whole conversation if you wanted to. And so it just like, this is where we're just getting to a point where it's like, what the, like, you're just grasping at straws. You're saying, well, he was clearly good because he didn't turn his phone. It's like, stop it. Like, all of the things that they're grasping at. Right.
Because they knew they lost the war on footballs.
That's
correct. They went elsewhere.
Right. And as
it was a stroke of genius, really.
Yes.
On their part.
And that's 100%. And as we've talked about, like, everyone hated the Patriots, so they just said, well, screw it. They must, and that's, to me, it's the other teams and the other owners that are really responsible. And they, of course, are Goodell's owners, are Goodell's bosses and everything else. But like, to me, it makes it easier. If I'm an owner of another team, I can say, well, we don't not win because we're not good enough. We don't win because they cheat. And so now I can explain to my fan base, like, hey, look, we just play by the rules and they don't. And that's why they win all the time and we don't, which is complete garbage. But they can spin it that way and say, oh, yeah, no. It's because we are fair and honest and the Patriots aren't. And so that explains away why we suck all the time, you know? And
it is
and
important to note too, like it's not just the Patriots that get sort of the blunt end of the shaft here. Like I think of the Cowboys. Now, no one's ever going to feel bad for Jerry Jones or the Cowboys, but you had, the Ray Rice situation, which really was like ground zero for every awful piece of leadership from Roger Goodell from there on out. But after that, they say we want to be leaders in domestic violence and everything like that. Ezekiel Elliott gets investigated. The investigator on the case recommends no punishment. They can't find anything. Then she is kept out of the room when the NFL holds a meeting and they decide to suspend him for 6 games or whatever it was. Meanwhile, you have Josh Brown, who's on the Giants, and John Mara, Roger Goodell, the Tisch family.
Embarrassing.
They protect the kicker who got separated from his family at a Pro Bowl event where NFL security was certainly aware of this. They tried to cover it up for a kicker and didn't institute the mandatory 6-game suspension, whatever it may be. Not that a 6-game suspension offsets domestic violence,
obviously,
not,
right. But yeah,
but like there was a system put in place to punish it. They didn't find it with Elliott and punished him anyway. And they did find it with the Giants player and tried to cover that up. And who is the head of the NFL's domestic violence situation is Lisa Friel, who's a diehard Giants fan with Giants posters in her basement.
Just a coincidence. It's just a coincidence.
And so it's like things like that where you're kind of like, why can't you just like it again? It doesn't have to be like this. It just doesn't. But the Patriots probably won't get that anymore. I think the Bengals video situation a couple of years ago was the last of the last. Which
that one's
ridiculous.
Even worse. That's the worst one. In my eyes, that's the worst thing I've ever heard.
It really was, because the guy that filmed it, Roger Goodell's on the TV right now talking to Keegan-Michael Kay. So that's, I'm sure, a hoot. I'm sure America is dying laughing at that one.
By the way, Keegan-Michael Kay started out in his monologue. He said that he was talking about last year's event, and he goes, this because there was no one there, obviously. He goes, that room was emptier than Urban Meyer's playbook. So that was pretty good. So
not bad. I'm sure it was funnier than whatever Roger Goodell just said.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Bengals thing, the guy, the poor guy was just trying to film stuff during the game because he was covering a scout. You ever film a scout during the game? It's like watching me watch a game with a notepad.
Right.
He moved in front of the Bengals staff. Like he moved to the front row with a whole row of Bengals staffers to film it. It's like he wasn't sneaking it in the back.
Right.
And it's like you saw the video. It is the same video I take from the press box if I want to show how and they came down in the 3rd round pick. And it's about parity. It's really what it was about. The NFL loves parity. Every year they send press releases on how many games were decided by one score, how many teams made the playoffs after not making the playoffs, which Super Bowl teams weren't in the playoffs. Like all these, they love that. So the fact that the Patriots were like the variant that kept screwing things up, a little Loki term for you, it disrupted the order of things the way the NFL sees it. And that's why you saw 1st round picks and then 3rd round picks for that. It was so over the top, but no one cared because it was the Patriots. But now the Patriots are just like every other team. They haven't they haven't won a playoff game since they won the Super Bowl 3 years ago.
Right.
I don't think we'll be seeing the hammer come down on them for this. So as annoying and frustrating as it was, it was the good old days in that regard.
Yeah, that's very true. That is very true. So the other part of it, and one more thing I wanted to talk about before I let you go, we've been going a while here, but was the Jeff Pash stuff, and Pash has done all, it's just a pretty slimy guy. He's one of those guys when you think about lawyer and you're like, ooh, that's like Jeff Pash to me. Like,
did you read his emails to Bruce Allen and the Washington football team?
Oh, Bird, he's the word. It's unbelievable, that guy. But
it was like, I know you didn't mean to break this rule. I will get this off because you're the only one who gave me a Hooters VIP card. That actually happened. And Jeff Pash is still, the executive vice president and general counsel. So
yeah, it's
no accountability.
Right. And so, but no, so now Mortensen report, people asked them to bring it back to say, no, that's not true. And the quote is outrageous from him, but he said,
this is the email with the Patriots counsel, Robin Glazer. The back and forth email from the Patriots.
Yeah.
It started with Stacey and then went to the lawyer.
Right. And so he goes, I have doubts that piecemeal disclosures are likely to accomplish much. If anything, I would think they are likely to prompt additional questions, additional stories, and additional irresponsible speculation and commentary. Once the investigation is completed and the facts are known, any incorrect reporting will be shown for what it is. And it's
The report came out 3 months later.
right. And the report was basically saying, no, it's just, it's out.
And it was
ridiculous.
a 500-page report. Like no
and
one
he
was
edited it.
Right. Yeah. And it at the same time, around the time, remember there was a report going on like Mike Kensel got fired. He's off the NFL operations page. They came out, Brian McCarthy, I think, the NFL PR guy, tweeted an Apple Notes app. Mike Kensel has been reassigned. He has not been fired. It's like they came out in like 5 minutes to correct the record on Mike Kensel, which who gives a crap about what Mike Kensel's job is? It's like, this is a false report that came. And they were also like, we don't know that it came from the league office. It's like, Jeff, nobody else knows the numbers except people from the league. No one could have leaked it to Mortensen from outside the league. Like the Patriots wouldn't leak false numbers that made them look bad to Mortensen. So who leaked them? And he's like, we don't know that it came from the league. And it's like, that's the umbrage of it, where it's just sort of like, how could you say that we leaked it? Like, what's your proof? But yeah, I mean, the whole thing and the destruction of the data, it's just what we know. Imagine what we don't know. And it's the frustrating thing. I don't think enough people see it, but I'm sure this week maybe more people do, because Florio has a different audience than me. You know, like he has when it comes from me, like I like to think everything I've written about DeflateGate has been straightforward. Like I go crazy about it, obviously, but it's all based on what I've come across. But people see CBS Boston, they're like, well, they just write it off. Right. So when the more national, and you mentioned the Kevin Seifert story, that one blew my mind when it came out, because you remember when Mike Reese had a blog that was like, some of the things in that story weren't possible, and here's why. They deleted that blog from the internet. Yeah. So for ESPN to come out and be like, the NFL actually really beefed this one, was incredible. So I don't know. I think if anything, Brady proved in the Super Bowl against the Seahawks, the Falcons, you might have remembered that one. Yeah. The Eagles, even though we lost. Right. The Rams. And then last year against the Chiefs, like the friggin' air pressure is insignificant. And he's rather good without any sort of Jim McNally, or they were not the key to his success. So at least I think he proved that to lessen this, but it doesn't make it right that the record shows that he is a cheater and had to sit out 4 games, where it's like they didn't prove that and they should just admit it.
Right. And but they never will. And that's what's even more frustrating about it, because we all know they never will. And that makes it a million times worse, you know? So, but anyways, I think that's a good note as any to leave on. Dark Blue Gold mentioned, have we used the phrase under pressure yet? And I botched that one. We botched it to not use the phrase under pressure, but what are you going to do? It's the way it goes.
We've been doing this for a long time. You can't hit a home run every time.
That's true. That's a good point. So
I did say we could do it for like 7 hours, but I was like, we got to keep it somewhat.
Oh yeah, because we could just go. I mean, we could just go. Like this is one. I
want to sleep tonight. Yeah.
This is one of those things that I could just talk about for hours, because like I'm not as passionate as you, I don't think, but like I have been on the wall defending this, because it's like it's so dumb and it makes no sense. None of it makes any sense. Like logically, it makes no sense, and so it's just whatever. So. But I will say about when you talk about your reporting, I think that your reporting about it is very measured. It's not, you're not some, well, when I say measured, I mean like you're not like flying off of the handle. Like you're just a Patriots fan and you're saying, all this is garbage and this is why, and you're giving stuff that, that are just opinions. You're giving out like factual information and disproving what people are saying. Like, it's not, it's not like you're just, oh, this is my opinion. No, that you're just giving out, this is what happened. And here's what happened. And this is what happened again. And then, so it's.
And I've changed it as more information has become available to me. Like I said, I didn't come out saying like, oh, Patriots didn't do anything. Like that wasn't my stance. I was going with what the information available. And as the more and more information became available, as friggin' MIT scientists were calling me on the phone, as legal experts in New York were calling me on the phone, and I'm like, God damn, I am over my head. But I tried to absorb as much as I could, and you just saw so many missteps. And that's the other thing, is Brady ultimately lost, right? But you've had 4 judges rule on it, and 2 ruled for him and 2 ruled against him. And the 2 who ruled against him one of whom said in the court, which I got to go to because I cover Second Circuit Court of Appeal stuff all the time for my job, said that the evidence regarding the football deflation was convincing, if not overwhelming. And that is based on a league that, I mean, you read the Troy Vincent testimony earlier. We know that they lied about the numbers that came out. It was not convincing, and it was not, certainly wasn't overwhelming. So I think that is the basis. And, you know, the two judges that ruled in favor of the NFL ultimately ruled that the CBA allowed Goodell to do whatever he did. They didn't rule that they caught him deflating footballs.
Right.
They ruled that Goodell has the power to do whatever the hell he wants. So it was ultimately a loss for Brady and the league. I mean, the players who are the league, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Just another loss for the NFLPA. But it's not like this black and white, open and shut. Well, he served the suspension. It's like, it was a battle he couldn't win. It wasn't about the evidence at that point. It was about the language of a CBA and the way 2 out of 3 judges interpreted it.
Right.
And that's what probably, it's not as easy a headline or story to tweet out, but that is the essential reason that DeflateGate still stands as the public record to this day.
Yeah. No, it's ridiculous. I mean, if you had a true independent investigation, they could never, ever come to the conclusion that it was actually a cheating scandal. Never.
Even the non-independent investigation did not determine that.
Right. That's very true. That's very true. So, but anyways, all right. Well, Mike, thanks so much for coming on, man. Appreciate it. Before you go, just tell everyone where they can, read you and see you and hear you, and maybe you'll be talking DeflateGate more, but you won't be talking exclusively DeflateGate. We do have a new quarterback who is pretty exciting.
Did you see us mic'd up at the Pro Bowl?
Awesome.
That was pretty good.
That was so good.
Better than the Pro Bowl.
It was. Literally, I watched the full 20-minute mic'd up thing, and I watched 0 seconds of the Pro Bowl. So
I felt bad for Mac all year because the Saban Belichick 1-2 punch. When you're going to you can tell he's like, if I say anything to these people, I'm gonna just get it. Especially because we're coming down from Cam Newton press conferences, which were 45 minutes, and every topic in the world was explored. Mac just being he would throw for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. I'm like, hey, you must have felt good at their touchdowns. I just need to get better. I know I'm not good enough. I just really need to work on it. It's man, life is short, dude. I want to just pat him on the back and be like, you're playing quarterback in the NFL and doing decently at it. I would smell a rose or two, but that's not for me to say. But then you see the mic'd up segment and his personality and the fun and trash talking and the camaraderie with people that aren't even his teammates. That was a good watch for anyone that has seen it. It's on YouTube.
Yeah. And Chandler Jones tweeted out I'm a Mac fan. I was already a Mac fan. He's then the gritty sealed the deal for me or something like that.
Darius Slay was like, are you kidding me right now? Am I getting trash talked at the Pro Bowl by Mac friggin' Jones?
That was so good.
Replacement?
That was so good. Fantastic.
But yeah, CBSBoston.com is where I do my writing. I pop on to Boston Sports Tonight on NBC Sports sometimes. I'll be on Sports Final Sunday night with Dan Roach talking about the Super Bowl.
Love it. Love it.
Hopefully that Super Bowl doesn't suck.
Who do you got? Who do you think's going to win?
I mean, it's a head and heart thing. My head is just you got to pick the Rams for the same reason I picked the Rams against the Bucks when the Bucks had an injured offensive line. Just the Donald Von Miller duo.
It's tough.
If you have a weakness on your line, it's scary. And God, the interior situation on the Bengals offensive line is a frightening nightmare. So
they're so bad.
At the same time, so I'm picking them -4.5. And I think that'll be the case. But at the same time, I just watched the Bengals have that same dumpy offensive line against a pretty good defensive line from the Chiefs, down 21-3 on the road, and Joe Burrow just being so damn cool and winning that game, and the Bengals losing the overtime toss and still winning. I can't say they have no chance, but I feel similar to how I did against the Bucks. And maybe it ends up being the same. I mean, the Bucks were down 27-3 and almost won that frigging game. So I think McVay and Stafford are always 1 second away from just giving you the game. So hopefully we get a good one. I love Joe Burrow. I don't know how you can't. I'm not saying he's the next Brady, but he's got a certain coolness about him that I really like. So we'll see.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun. And Stafford tried to blow it. I mean, he tried.
Oh God,
he tried to lose the game to San Fran, and the guy just dropped it. So if he catches that pass, then then San Fran's playing. On
to
Sunday.
Be fair, Burrow threw one of those too when he tried to throw it away in the sideline. The Chiefs.
That's a very good point.
Toes
That's a very good point. That was my guy. That was my guy.
I forget who it was.
Jesus Christ, the kid from Missouri, their rookie
54
linebacker.
maybe.
Yeah, he was like my favorite. He was like one of my favorite prospects in the draft, and I loved him. And of course, I'm blanking on his name right now, but that's okay.
Nick Bolton.
That's it, Nick Bolton. He was my guy. I wanted the Patriots to draft him so bad. He played like an animal out there, and he had a great year for the Chiefs this year. But anyways.
Anyways, so yeah, so that's me. But yeah, not too much Deflategate these days until it hits the news. So I think I'm done now after Roger. So until next time, I will close the cabinet and then I'll let you know when it's back open.
Love it. Fantastic. And when it opens back up, we'll have you back on. And, we'll have you back on at some point with the other co-hosts that don't hate Deflategate so we can actually talk Patriots football.
I don't blame them. I truly don't. But you got to. It's important.
Right. Exactly. So, all right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate thanks for coming out, for listening.